Time now for the Easy Choice presented by Geico. I'm Jamie Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. And Dave, it's week 7, 6 teams on a bye, lots of injuries. There are no easy choices, at least not for the majority of people, but we're going to help them out. We're going to give them some starts and sits that they can use for their fantasy rosters for week number 7. And let's start where we always do, with the start of the week. As you heard Tommy Tran say, the streak is over. No more undefeated for me. And now it's time to find a new guy to start a new streak. And we're going with Jerome Ford taking on the Indianapolis Colts. It may not seem like the easiest of matchups, and Ford obviously in a little bit of a timeshare right now with Kareem Hunt. But the Colts just lost a big piece of their defense. Grover Stewart, one of their defensive tackles, one of their best run stuffers, is suspended for the next 6 games. And we've seen this Colts defense give up some big games so far. 3 running backs, 4 times. Travis Etienne did it twice. Over 16.9 PPR points. And I think Ford showed some good performance last week in tandem with Kareem Hunt. Had 3 runs in the 4th quarter over 13 yards against a really good 49ers run defense. He's had some strong performances without Nick Chubb so far. The game against the Titans, for example, 19.1 PPR points. That was touchdown dependent. But this may be finally free of those 3 difficult matchups that we said. We thought this might be a little bit tougher, but now with Stewart there, I like the situation for Ford. As you see, top 12 running back for me.
I don't know how much I would have liked Ford if Grover Stewart played. You really
totally
can't
agree.
understate
Totally
it enough
agree.
because he was basically their highest graded run stopper in their front 7. And now he's gone. So replacing him, that's going to be hard for the Colts to do. And also think about the trouble that the 49ers offense had against this Browns defense. You think the Colts are going to do any better? They're going to get some turnovers. That'll help Jerome Ford get even more carries. And I like that you noticed how well he did in the 4th quarter. He actually struggled through the first 3 quarters. But in the 4th quarter, he came alive. And that's what I'm kind of expecting to happen, maybe a little bit sooner than the 4th quarter this week. But I think Jerome Ford is a must-start fantasy running back. I love the call.
And we heard Kevin Stefanski say they wanted to get Kareem Hunt going a little bit early in that game. But the fact that they went to Ford, still played more snaps than Kareem Hunt, you should feel pretty good about Jerome Ford for week number 7. Let's go to some other starts for me for this week. Jordan Love and Luke Musgrave. See a theme here. A couple Packers, a couple Commanders. Matchups. Packers get the Broncos. Commanders get the Giants. And Tyler Lockett, he just owns the Arizona Cardinals. Hopefully that will continue for at least one more game. But let's talk about the Commanders here and Brian Robinson. He's been a little suspect. He's gotten by with some touchdowns. Caught a touchdown last week, for example. That's not exactly something you want to hang your hat on. But he's playing the Giants. We know that's a bad team. And typically the game script is what you look for Brian Robinson. And I think this will be a favorable game script for him. So this was actually my other choice for start of the week. But again, once the Stewart suspension happened, I was going with Jerome Ford.
You've passed up Brian Robinson like 3 times this year for start of the week. He's given you at least 13 PPR points 4 of 6 games. The one thing that I notice is that when Sam Howell is under pressure, he throws to his running backs a lot more, including Brian Robinson. It's not all Antonio Gibson. Love the idea of him getting 2 or 3 catches against the defense in the Giants. They're going to be coming after him quite a bit in that game. So I think that actually helps Brian Robinson on top of what he does as a runner.
Yeah, the one thing the Giants have actually done a pretty good job of containing pass-catching running backs. They have yet to, I think Adam Azer said it was over 34 yards receiving. It was the game against the 49ers. It was 30 yards or less.
Right.
And I played the prop, take the under on the receiving yards, and he hit the over because it's Christian McCaffrey. But in any event, Terry McLaurin, you want to talk about owning the Giants. He just absolutely dominates them. 5 straight games, 14 PPR points or more in 5 straight games. And all of McLaurin's best games so far this year have been on the road. And now he's on the road again, so he's got a good opportunity here to continue to beat up on the Giants. Then for Luke Musgrave, look, we're searching for the next tight end, a guy that we can rely on, play that position and play it with confidence. Musgrave, 2 of his last 3 games, 6 catches or more. The one that he didn't do it, he left with a concussion against the Lions on that Thursday night. So great matchup against the Broncos. Again, you know kind of the theme. We beat up on the Broncos. Hopefully Luke Musgrave will continue to do that as well.
Should we keep beating up on the Broncos?
Let's beat up on the Broncos.
Let's keep going.
With Christian Watson as one of the guys that you have on your list as a player that you're highlighting for this week. We love the setup for Christian Watson. The other guys that Dave is looking at here, a Bronco, Jaleel McLaughlin. I'm curious if you like McLaughlin or Javonte Williams better, but Matthew Stafford, Deontay Johnson coming back from his hamstring injury, and Jonnu Smith. Dave, we're not going to spend a lot of time on Jonnu Smith. Do you like Smith better or Pitts better this week?
I like Pitts better than Smith. They're both top 10 fantasy tight ends, though. Definitely like the idea of going to grab Smith off the waiver wire if he's still there. You can use him as a flex this week in PPR. I think he can absolutely help you. And Christian Watson, it's not a high bar. He's had at least 10 PPR points in each of his first 2 games. He has just 5 catches through those 2 games. 1 game with more than 4 targets. I think they let him get a little bit more run. I think the Packers overall, not necessarily attack attack downfield, but spread the ball around. I think Watson's probably going to be the target leader. Aaron Jones is certainly going to have a role there. But you look at that Broncos defense, you know as well as everybody else that they stink against the pass, including deep balls. I do think there will be one or two of those that go Christian Watson's way, like him as a high-end flex.
So you think that Watson will have more targets than Romeo Doubs and Aaron Jones, not combined, obviously?
Not combined, no, but I think he's got a shot to, if not match them, have maybe one or two more than those guys. Doubs is someone that actually makes sense for what the Packers are trying to do. They've talked this week about spreading the ball around a little bit more, and he's a good, consistent route runner. I don't mind Doubs as a flex this week either, but I'm just not sure if he's got the same type of explosiveness. He doesn't as Christian Watson. We saw last year Watson take a short pass from Jordan Love to the house. He can easily do the same thing. He's basically a high-end flex every week, regardless of the opponent. The fact that he's taking on the Broncos makes him even more appealing.
3 catches, 91 yards in that game you're referencing against the Raiders. He had a 77-yard reception in that game. All right, let's go to the other side of the ball. Again, Jaleel McLaughlin, somebody that you have on this list. Samaje Perine, I thought might miss this game, but he returned to practice on Wednesday, so he's good to go. So now we have the dreaded maybe 3-headed or 4-headed monster, as we saw in their last game. Who's your favorite Broncos running back this week?
It's McLaughlin. That's why he's on the list. And it should be a closer call in my mind than it is between him and Javonte Williams. But I just see McLaughlin as someone who's more explosive, someone who led the way in snaps last week, didn't lead the way in touches, didn't actually lead the way in yards, but I think he can. He's got that upside, and we've seen him do well near the goal line already this year. I think this could be a fairly high-scoring matchup, and the more that the Broncos do to take work off Russell Wilson, I think the better their chances are of winning the game. So I don't mind McLaughlin as a low-end RB2.
I actually have both these guys ranked back-to-back. I have Javonte slightly ahead. I just feel like he's going to get the majority of the touches. I don't know if he'll get the more high-level touches, because that's certainly something that can go to McLaughlin. As you said, they've used him in some goal line opportunities, and as we saw in that game, granted he was coming back from the hip injury, did not work in the passing game as much as McLaughlin did, but also Perine getting banged up in that game, that sort of throws things out of whack. I just hope that they sort of concentrate their touches to these two guys, because there's an opportunity, especially this week with all the running backs injured and on a bye, that they both can be productive. So I give Javonte a slight edge, but I'd also like McLaughlin as well. Let's talk Steelers wide receivers, because Deontay Johnson coming back for the first time since week 1. No concern about A, rust, B, matchup, because the Rams are number 4 in fewest fantasy points allowed to receivers, and C, probably the biggest thing, George Pickens has been playing at a very high level, so you're going all in on Deontay.
I like Deontay in PPR better than Pickens. And Pickens targets 4 games without Deontay Johnson. They're 10, 6, 7, and 10, but really he's only had 3 great plays in the 4 games that he's missed. And so I'm wondering if those plays kind of go away, and in full PPR, the Steelers talked about it. They want to get Deontay Johnson involved. They need somebody like him to help move the chains in this offense. I think he absolutely ends up leading the Steelers in this game, especially in receptions. I think the numbers follow. Should be good for somewhere between 12, and if he scores, I know it sounds crazy. Deontay Johnson hasn't scored more than a year, but 17, 18 PPR points. I don't mind him this week as a low-end wide receiver too.
All right, and as you see, we showed your sit list there. Pickens on the sit list. So Deontay good, Pickens bad?
Pickens is a flex, not a top 24 wide receiver. I think there's going to be an emphasis on getting Deontay the ball more so than Pickens.
All right, so why are we sitting Zay Flowers? Because he's been very good as the lead receiver for Lamar Jackson. Really the only reliable receiver that he has aside from Mark Andrews.
I think he's a good flex too, and I actually like him better than George Pickens this week, and someone that I think you can pencil in 10 to 13 PPR points from. He needs to score a touchdown to get beyond that. We saw that last week. I think that's obviously possible in the matchup for the Ravens, and I agree with you. He is their #1 guy. The role has been evolving for him a little bit. He's starting to attack downfield a little bit more. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but this is a tough Lions defense that the Ravens are going up against. I do give them a lot of credit, and Lamar hasn't been at his best this year throwing the football.
I think he's been throwing the football out of this world. He's just had a lot of drops and a lot of misplays.
There's been some games where he hasn't been as good. I shouldn't have said he hasn't been as good, but like there have been some moments this year where he hasn't been. I don't think he was as great last week. 2 weeks ago, he was, for sure. 3 games ago, I'm not sure he was either.
I mean, for me...
Or maybe it was the Browns game. But was that...
The Browns game is when he was running. That's a great defense.
He was running. He was efficient in that game.
Yeah.
The game 2 games ago, he had a lot of drops. That wasn't on him. Last week wasn't as much as a good game.
Yeah, to me, I love Zay Flowers this week. I just think the way that they have to play against Detroit, you can't run on the Lions. They're going to have to throw. Lamar, I don't know if Lamar's a great start because the Lions defense has been great.
You're starting Lamar. I don't know anybody who's starting Lamar.
Without question. But I think in terms of Flowers, the way that he's been operating, the targets he's been getting, and how he, as you said, is evolving, I think we're starting to see a guy that is becoming a must-start guy. Certainly this week with all the teams on the bye. At least that's how I would approach it. And let's talk about the Colts running backs, because you are saying to sit Jonathan Taylor. I'm saying to sit Zach Moss. I would actually actually say sit both of them. Which of the two do you prefer for this week?
I like Moss better. And what we saw last week in the 3 quarters that the Colts were basically kind of competitive in against Jacksonville, they were splitting reps dead even. It was snaps, it was touches, even Steven. And then once the game became a blowout, Jonathan Taylor was out, Zach Moss played a little bit more. That's one factor. The other factor is Zach Moss had exclusive work near the goal line. I don't know if that's flipping anytime soon. Jonathan Taylor's still working his way back. I'd lean towards Zach Moss for at least one more week, and it's a nightmarish matchup against Cleveland. That's why you probably want to stay away from them. But Zach Moss should get some decent opportunities. Low end RB2 this week.
I lean Moss over Taylor as well. I would try to avoid both of them. What we saw last week was 23 more snaps for Taylor from the previous week. Week 5, he played 10 snaps. He played 33 snaps the following week. At some point, and it may happen this week, the tide turns, and it's now Jonathan Taylor's backfield. And so those goal line opportunities, the passing down work, everything starts to slant in Jonathan Taylor's favor. And this is just purely speculation. So I don't want to trust these guys. And as you alluded to, this is the most brutal matchup we could possibly find. Maybe the Lions are worse. It's just tough to run on this team. And so I think what we're going to see is really one of these two, and it's probably Moss, is going to have to be the leader in receptions and work in the passing game. I don't think they score. Now, granted, Moss has been great against the Titans. He's been great against the Ravens. So, again, that's why I would lean Moss over Taylor.
Sure,
but
and the receptions are a big deal,
I don't like this situation for either of these guys because, again, at some point, Taylor's going to take over the backfield, and you don't want to be stuck relying on Moss because it's coming. At some point, Taylor will be better. Some other sits for me, we saw the list there, but let's talk about Naji Harris. He's really just on the sit list every week because he's just not very good. And I really hope that we come off the bye for the Steelers, and it's Jaylen Warren's backfield. Now, this is another tough matchup. The Rams have been very good for the most part against opposing running backs. Jaylen Warren, I'll say this again, Jaylen Warren has outscored Naji Harris in PPR in every game so far this season. We now have another pass catcher on the field. We'll see if that continues because that's really where Jaylen Warren has made the majority of his production, catching the ball in the backfield. But if you can stay away from him, I would try to do so. And then for Kirk Cousins, I know everybody's saying, okay, do you want to judge last week's performance as really who Kirk Cousins is without Justin Jefferson? Probably not fair. Only 31 pass attempts in that game. But that also was a game that they had the lead against the Bears. He's going to throw the ball a lot more against the 49ers. The 49ers know that. Kirk Cousins, I think, is going to struggle in this matchup. So I'm a little concerned that primetime game, San Francisco angry, coming off a brutal loss for them that they didn't expect to lose going into Cleveland and how that game all unfolded. That defense is going to be so on top of Cousins that I think we're going to see turnover-prone Cousins, mistakes, not a lot of
just
production.
One of those bad road games.
No, these at home.
Two things about Kirk Cousins. Two things about Kirk Cousins. Number one, Kyle Shanahan knows him. They work together, so that's going to be another factor. And number two, he's old. He's one of those old quarterbacks around the league. And speaking of old, it's Jamie Eisenberg's birthday today,
Good
ladies
transition.
and gentlemen. Thank you. I don't know if it's the best transition, but the whole crew got together.
Is this a Jack original?
It is. Well,
Wow.
we did Prisco's 80th 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
And today's Jamie's
60th?
Today's Jamie's 50th, but you don't look a day older than 47.
Thank you. I feel 80 today, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Happy birthday, bud.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, okay.
Now get us out of here.
All right. Make sure you check out the Fantasy Football Today podcast where our host, Adam Mazer, forgot to wish me happy birthday today. So
Did he really? That's unbelievable.
But in any event, we do a great job giving you all the fantasy information that you need. And as you see, we have lots of fun. So Fantasy Football Day podcast, wherever podcasts are found.
That cake smells good.